Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, as I prepped my shaft with alcohol, I degreased it, I'm going to prep these feathers just real quick. This is, you don't have to be over anal with this or really worry a lot about it, but it's a good step. I always do this. Just a little alcohol, and I can take all of these feathers, create a rounded edge with the cloth, and just degrease them all at one time. You're just getting off dust, and you're just giving it a chance to have better adhesion. Okay, and then I'll just place my feathers right there. My jig, this jig was made out of a piece of 1-inch PVC pipe that I just heated it up with basically a torch and a acetylene torch. You can use anything, a hair dryer, whatever will get the PVC soft. Pushed it flat in a vise, and then used a bandsaw to create this one edge. Now this is a 4-inch space right here, and these notches right here, I'll show you why. This is basically why those notches are cut, so they can go in between your indexing bolts. And again, I've got my indexing bolt set so that this point is even with the label. It's pointing up in line with the label, and then the bolt in front of that, the nut in front of that, is also an indexing point, so that will help me align that fletch on there. And it's just kind of eyeballing it to begin with. So once again, I'm going to stack these arrows up. I'm going to take my alcohol, liberally put it on that paper towel, create a nice little cleaning spot, go up and down these just a couple of times, and then set them aside. And that's 91% alcohol, folks, so it's good. High octane product. Feathers everywhere. If I wasn't recording this, I wouldn't be having these issues. Okay, starting the feather. And again, I did a dozen arrows earlier today, just sitting after work watching television. After I it's actually just kind of testing this new jig. You have to clean your jig occasionally. You'll get pieces of whatever in it, just like this one's got in it. You just kind of clean it out with your knife. Give it a little twist when it's giving you issues. If you use your knife, scraping on both sides like that. And if you have a tight jig, just twist it open. Again, you can buy these things and invest in these quick jigs. Are very good. I probably will own one at some point in time, but that just get a lot of gratification to doing this myself with homemade materials that I can make right in my garage or backyard or whatever. All right. The super glue application, I think, is critical. I've learned that if you obviously if you allow it, if you use too much and you allow it to get on your jig, it's going to stick, your feather's going to stick to your jig, and you're going to mess a lot of feathers up trying to get that right. But just set it at the, just tried to get it straight, just eyeballing it using the point of this nut that is up. Leaving that on there for a few seconds. These little cutouts here also act as little lifting handles too. As you're using your jig and you go to lift this thing up and away like that, it gives you a little leverage on it. So that's real nice. It went on there nice and smooth. Okay, so I'm going to rotate from. Okay, so as you saw, that one kind of stuck to my jig a little bit. I had tried to re-glue it twice. Had just a little bit of glue inside or touching the face of the jig, so that's going to happen. All I did was I just got the jig off of the arrow, off of the feather, and just got it in place, and just put a small point of super glue right here at the back. As you can see, that feather is on there perfectly. While that's setting up, I can go ahead and get my next feather ready inside my jig. I start from the forward portion of the feather, feeding it into the slot. Kimberly, can you get that on video? Can you see that? Okay, everything is more difficult when you're doing it on camera, so one of the ways to do it is just kind of give it the upright, and it will go. These things, and this is a brand new jig. I made this today. It's my second or third one that I've made, and so it's a little bit tight, but that's fine. We don't mind that. It will break in, as most things do. So you can see that's just a crude cut. It will work out. Alright, so pay particular attention to what I've got here, Kimberly. Alright, so I've got my bolts on the shafts, pointer straight up. Alright, so I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to skip one point. I'm going to skip one point. I'm going to go to the next one. That gives me a perfect 120 degree index point. Now I'm rotating this one because it fits a little looser, but I'm just going to rotate it up to match this one. I've already got my feather in my jig, and I've taught myself to apply this left-handed, so it's not as easy as you think it would be, but it's not difficult either. It's definitely more difficult on camera. Alright, so I'm just lining the bottom of this up with those index points and just set it on there, and don't worry about pressing down. Actually, the more you press down, the harder it is to get the feather out of the jig. I've learned that it's just set it on there, let that glue, let the weight of the jig. This is a substantially heavy piece of PVC pipe. When it's compressed and cut out like this, it has plenty of weight on it to act upon that feather. And again, the movement is up and back. That one went on very well, and as you can see, it's perfectly aligned with the tips of that bolt nut rather. Okay, so third feather, I'm gonna same thing. I'm gonna feed it from front to back, trying to start it. The jig is new, starting it from the front. And I know that I degreased this, but my hands are clean. You're probably thinking, why are you touching that when you degreased it? Well, because that's the best way for it to go in for me. And I know that my hands are clean. Okay, take my side cutters. You can use scissors for this. You could use a pocket knife. You could do this in the field. You could take this rig with you, and actually if you were in camp or something, you could do this in the field. Alright, one of the things that I do is I take my finger and just run it along that fletch just to make sure it's got adhesion. Okay, so I rotate it again, skipped the points, got my points lined up pretty well. Got my feather in my homemade jig. Ooh. A little super glue on the jig. Again, a little. When you're using these strong adhesives, a little goes a long way. Alright, I'm simply just trying to line this up with the points and set it on there. Again, not applying massive amounts of pressure. Guys like to, if a little bit is good, then a whole lot is better. That doesn't apply when you're fletching. Just give it enough weight to stay on there, and then let the adhesive do the job. And again, just leave it on there for just a few seconds. And then lift up into the rear. And it will stick sometimes. Just back, we got our second arrow in the cradle here. The clothespins. I'm grabbing, I'm just basically doing the same thing. This might be boring to watch over again, but I'll go through it pretty quick. I'm going to use just one indexing nut this time. You can just use one. That's all you really need. And I start, how I start is I use the label on the arrow. And it's just kind of eyeballing it to begin with. So once again, I'm going to stack these arrows up. I'm going to take my alcohol, liberally put it on that paper towel, create a nice little cleaning spot. Go up and down these just a couple of times. and then set them aside. And that's 91% alcohol, folks, so it's good. High octane product. Feathers everywhere. If I wasn't recording this, I wouldn't be having these issues. Okay, starting the feather. And again, I did a dozen arrows earlier today, just sitting after work watching television. After I made, it's actually just kind of testing this new jig. And you have to clean your jig occasionally. You'll get pieces of whatever in it, just like this one's got in it. You just kind of clean it out with your knife. Give it a little twist when it's giving you issues if you use your knife. Scraping on both sides like that. And if you have a tight jig, just twist it open. Again, you can buy these things and invest in these quick jigs. They're very good. I probably will own one at some point in time, but that just get a lot of gratification to doing this myself with homemade materials that I can make right in my garage or backyard or whatever. All right. The super glue application, I think, is critical. I've learned that if you obviously if you allow it, if you use too much and you allow it to get on your jig, it's going to stick, your feather's going to stick to your jig, and you're going to mess a lot of feathers up trying to get that right. But just set it at the, just tried to get it straight, just eyeballing it using the point of this nut that is up. Leaving that on there for a few seconds. These little cutouts here also act as little lifting handles too. As you're using your jig, when you go to lift this thing up and away like that, it gives you a little leverage on it. So that's real nice. It went on there nice and smooth. Okay, so I'm going to rotate from. Let me show you one last step that I think is pretty important. When you get done fletching these arrows, at the front of the arrow right here, you're going to have a kind of a rough edge, and that's pretty sharp actually right there. So if you're shooting off the hand or off the finger, that portion right there can actually stick into your hand and really cause some problems. It can also catch on your wrist if you're using a like a bear with a rest or something like that. So what you do is you just take your knife and just kind of whittle that edge down. As you can see there, I've got some white showing on each one of those front. So I just take my knife and I just kind of whittle it back, whittle it back, whittle it back, and then I put touches of super glue right there. And so that you've got a smooth transition, you can take your finger all the way from the shaft to the to the feather without sticking yourself. You can go all the way up like that. So if you can do that and it doesn't stick you, then it'll be much more smooth transition over your rest. But that was the last feather I did. It came out pretty good. As you can see there, it looks pretty good. Now I don't worry about the cock feather and the hen feathers. Personally, I know when I'm knocking my arrow that how to position it, so I don't bother with getting two different colors of arrows, and I kind of like the uniformity look. I bought these not necessarily because of the look of them, but because the quality and the price was terrific. So I'm taking these 5-inch feathers right here. That's a Kershaw knife with a terrific blade on it. Kind of an everyday carry knife. There's a rat one, but I'm taking these 5-inch feathers and I'm cutting that much off of them to give myself a nice 4-inch. It's a very good flight and it's very stable. It gets stable real quick off of heavy poundage recoil bows, and conversely, some of the lighter ones, the 40 pounders, it stabilizes real quick. So, but I shoot all of my bows, with the exception of one with a bare weather rest or some sort of elevated rest not off of the shelf. So that actually improves your arrow flight too. It allows the feathers, and that's one of the reasons you're shooting feathers, is so because it interferes less with the, you know, as it comes through that shelf area, that riser area. So anyway, that's what I do. I did a bunch of them tonight. They turn out really good. They're really durable. I like the durability, and again, durability is one of the main reasons that I do this.